Chase at the 40. Look at that move. Look at Chase go. Oh, my goodness. What a gear.
He comes down to this in his car end zone. Intercepted.
McPherson. And Cincinnati is heading to the Super Bowl.
Toss here. Mixon's going to throw. Open man. Caught. Higgins touchdown.
Drives. Touchdown. Joe Burrow has his first rushing touchdown of the season.
Hooday, Bengal fans. He is Maan. I am Jake. This is the Bengals Pulse, the heartbeat of our Cincinnati Bengals. Maan, it is good to be back, brother. I missed you. How you doing? You been good these last week and a half, 2 weeks?
It's been good. Busy and just trying to process. It's slowed down in Bengaldom right now. Everybody's on vacation. Not a lot of team news going on, but there's a lot of news from former players we're going to talk about in a few minutes. And it's good to be back and filming the show.
Absolutely good to be back. And, it's been kind of a crazy couple weeks. But I am very excited to be back here with you and with our listeners. And, man, just like for high school football, from here on out, man, it's all football. It is. We are going to be very busy right here on the Bengals Pulse, and I'm very excited about that. Obviously, with training camp right around the corner, so it's going to be an exciting time. And obviously, you and I both feel like this Bengals roster could be the best one we've seen in a long time. And that's going to mean some good things happening, hopefully, this year for our Bengals.
Yeah, they're loaded. They're set to make a big run, I think. It's one of the best rosters they've ever had. And I'm expecting a special season. And I can't wait for it to start. We're only 2 weeks away. That mock turtle soup kickoff luncheon is going to be happening. The new Bengal media guide will get released. And the first practice will happen also. And we're officially underway for the next 2023 NFL season.
Well, we are going to talk about all of those things here today. We're going to do an off-season recap here and just pretty much get prepared and ready for practice starting and the turtle soup luncheon and everything else that is right around the corner for us Bengal fans. The Bengals, let's start off and just say, I mean, right now, and we've talked about this plenty of times on the show, that we are in an incredible era of Bengals football. And this team, first of all, going for 3 division titles in a row. And I want to give you this stat real quick. Since 2013, so the last 10 AFC North winners goes like this. 2013 Bengals, 2014 Steelers, 2015 Bengals, 2016, 2017 Steelers, 2018, 2019 Ravens, 2020 Steelers, and then, of course, 2021 and 2022 are Bengals. So the last 10 AFC North winners, Mom, 4 of those go to the Bengals, 4 goes to the Steelers, only 2 to our Baltimore Ravens fans, and, of course, our Cleveland Browns fans, still without an AFC North division title. Mon, first of all, let's talk about, again, we both think that the Bengals are going to win the AFC North again. Are they going to win it as easy as they did back in 21? I remember last year in 22, it kind of came down there to the end. But is this going to be an easier year for the Bengals to win the AFC North championship?
I fully expect them to win. I don't think it's going to be an easier year. I think all the other teams in the division got better also, but I don't think they're better than the Bengals. Back to what you just read about all the AFC North championships, to our friends in Cleveland, hey, man, having 4 AFC North championships, that's pretty good for this poverty franchise. they continually make fun of the Bengals, poverty. Those, hey, you know what?
That's funny.
Maybe one day you can join the big boy club and have a championship, AFC North championship.
They're never going to join the big boy club, man. That is you talk about a poverty franchise that has got to be. Listen, let me just give you this stat here for all of our Cleveland Browns fans out there listening. All right, since the division realignment, all right, since the NFL realigned into the 4 new divisions, here we go. Are you ready? All right, you have the New England Patriots with 16 division titles since the realignment. Okay, they are by far the most. Second, you have three teams tied for second. The Steelers, the Chiefs, and the Colts, all with 9 division championships. Again, that's since the realignment. Then you have 4 teams tied for third. That is our Bengals, the Baltimore Ratbirds, the Denver Broncos, and the Houston Texans, all with 6. So you have the Patriots at 16. You have the Steelers, Chiefs, Colts at 9. You have the Bengals, Ratbirds, Broncos, and Texans at 6. And then you go down the list, the Jets with 1, the Dolphins with 1, the Bills with 3, the Chargers with 5, the Titans with 4, the Jaguars with 2, the Raiders with 1. Mon, guess who the only team in the AFC that has not win a division title since the realignment? Who do you think that is, Mon? I'll give you a hint.
Was it the team we just talked about?
The Cleveland Brownies are the only team since the realignment to not win a division title. Browns fans, listen, I know you're excited about beating us a couple times these last couple years. Enjoy that. We're your Super Bowl. I get that. But if there's any poverty franchise in the NFL, it resides in Cleveland.
You're not going to get an argument out of me. I'm always in awe of their talent, and because they have a good roster, they just don't have that it factor. They can't piece it together, and you just read the stats. You just read it right there. They can chirp all they want on Twitter. It makes them happy. The bottom line, this poverty franchise in Cincinnati is owns you. That's it. They own it. We own them. I get you've won 4 or 5 of the last 6 or 7. Enjoy it. We'll take the Super Bowl. We'll take the AFC Championship games. You guys could win those little head-to-head battles. The Bengals are in a better spot, and we'll see you week 1.
Yeah, right. The Cleveland Browns. I always go back to that. You and I used to laugh about. I can't remember what the guy's name was. He was a Browns fan, and he did the Factory of Sadness. Do you remember that? That was the greatest. Where he's standing out in front of.
It was the unofficial tourism video of Cleveland.
Oh yeah! And, if you have not seen that, you have got to go on and watch that. That is classic. I mean, it is absolutely hysterical, and it is so factual, Mon. It's insane. I mean, he does such a great job with it. If you have not seen it, you've got to go on and watch it. It's absolutely hysterical. The Factory of Sadness.
You know what I love the most about that? He has a meltdown. He's screaming about all the crap that's happening in Cleveland, and then at the end, he goes, "I'll see you next year." Yeah. Like he's fed up. But even when the Bengals have a bad season, damn it, Dad got it. We'll see you next year.
We'll see you next year. All right, well, Mom, let's talk a little bit about what we have coming up, because obviously practice is right around the corner. I mean, we are just a little over 2 weeks away from the start of training camp. And I'm going to give you guys the training camp dates right now. We have in July, the first day of practice is Wednesday, July 26th. Then you have practice on the 27th, the 28th, Saturday the 29th, Monday the 31st. And then we go into August. That's Tuesday the 1st, Thursday the 3rd, Friday the 4th, Saturday the 6th, Monday, and then they have a practice on Monday as well. Gates are opening at 1:30 p.m. Practice begins at 2:15. Those 10 days of practice, Mon, are going to lead right up into that first preseason game against the Green Bay Packers. And if I remember correctly, Mon, they are doing a joint practice with the Green Bay Packers. Is that correct? I think that might be on the 9th.
They are. It's just one day. It's not a 2-day event like they had last year with the Rams, but they are going to practice one day with the Packers. Hopefully no helmets are thrown at players and there's no brawl. But, they're going to have one joint practice, which I think is good because, let's face it, these teams, competitive juices, it's always going to be a productive practice because they're playing against other players. They don't want to look bad. It's going to be good for both teams.
Yeah. And it's going to be interesting to see, too, how Coach Taylor really attacks these training camp sessions. We know from our previous shows, we've talked about it. Our guests have talked about it, how the OTAs were a little bit lighter this year. It's going to be interesting to see how Coach Taylor attacks these basically training camp practices, because you have a lot of new guys coming in trying to make an impact on this roster. And so it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see how Coach Taylor goes with these practices, how hard they go. And we know recently Coach Taylor has kind of backed off a little bit on the practices and for injury purposes and other reasons. So it should be very interesting to see how that all pans out.
Yeah, I think it's going to be similar to what happened last year. There was a lot of criticism. I criticized it, but it ended up working out really well. He is going to have a pitch count for his starters. He doesn't want that wear and tear during training camp. And Orlando Brown mentioned it. There was a good interview with in the Athletic, and they talked about the Bengals' light OTA schedule. Mm-hmm. It's a sales pitch to some of these free agents out there. They know that the Bengals coaching staff, they take care of their players. They, they come in and they make sure that they're healthy and ready to go. They don't want these soft tissue injuries. And the veterans out there know that, and they appreciate that. And let's face it, the last 2 years, the Bengals did have some injuries last year, but the year before they were really, really fortunate. Maybe it's working, and hopefully it continues. And I don't expect a heavy workload for our vets in training camp.
No, I don't either. Well, you got some guys coming off of injuries as well from the offseason and from last year. So you got quite a few guys coming off of those type of injuries that take a little bit of extra time. So I agree with you. I think the vets are going to have definitely an easier training camp. Maybe possibly, that first week, probably won't see a lot of those guys out there. However, we did see some guys return for OTAs that we thought maybe might not have a chance to hit the practice field. So it's going to be interesting to see, again, how all that pans out. But it comes down to building up to that Packers-Bengals game in Cincinnati on August the 11th at 7 p.m. That is the Bengals' first preseason game. And again, we already know we're not going to see a lot of guys playing in that football game. However, we are going to see a lot of the youth play in that football game. And to me, I don't know, there's just so many young guys that are fighting for roster spots. It's going to be still a very fun preseason. I really feel like it's going to be a competitive one. And I'm really interested to see guys like Chase Brown and Charlie Jones and Yosivas and all the guys that we have drafted this year, these young offensive weapons. I think we're going to see a lot of those guys carrying the weight here in the preseason. And then you have Bengals at Falcons the following week. That's on August 18th at 7:30 p.m. And then they finish the preseason at the Commanders August 26th, and that's at 6:05. And that again, going from 3 games to 4 games, it's going to be very interesting to see how the Bengals work out the starters play in time. And I think we'll see most of that in that Falcons game on the 18th.
Yeah, week 2 has become the new week 3 of preseason. That's where, if any starters play, it'll be week 2. I honestly don't expect that to happen. I really don't. I think it's going to be the third stringers, guys fighting for practice squad. Yeah, they're going to get a majority of the snaps. They got 90 people on the roster right now, 90 players, and I think basically from 40 up, from 40 to 90, those are the guys who are going to play 75, 80% of the snaps in the preseason.
Yeah. And, again, another exciting thing this offseason that us Bengal fans are not used to so much is the Rattler, right? We're gonna get to see Ken Riley get inducted into the Hall of Fame, and that's very exciting for guys like you and me who have been Bengal fans for over 40 years. It's going to be exciting to see that because that's something we're not used to seeing every year, obviously, and we haven't seen that in a very long time, Maan, where a Bengal has had that opportunity. So excited about that. That usually kicks off the NFL preseason, which will be the week before that Packers game.
Yeah, it's going to be great to see him go in there. It's a travesty that he's only the second Bengal to be in the Hall of Fame. He's deserving. I wish he was still alive to be a part of it, but his family has to be excited and proud. And I wish I could be there, but I'm happy. I'm happy for his family. I'm happy for the Bengals and all the Bengal fans because it's deserving.
Yeah, second player, but third member of the organization, obviously with the great Paul Brown being inducted as well. But yes, second player. And I hopefully we see a run here. Hopefully we see a run these next couple years of guys like Willie and Ken Anderson being inducted as well. But yes, it's very exciting. And again, I think there's a lot of excitement building up for this season. We talked about it before, Mon. This Bengals football team, this roster is loaded with talent. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But before we do, let's preview this schedule just really quick one more time. Again, Mon, you talked about it earlier. We start on the road against the Browns, and then the next week we come back to Paycor Stadium and face the Ravens. So 2 divisional games to start the season. But you and I both talked about this earlier when we did our schedule preview. This schedule kind of fits well for our Bengals. I mean, I really feel like this might be the first year where the Bengals have a little bit of an advantage when it comes to the way this schedule is built out, Mom. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a fair schedule. The first 2 games are going to be tough. I mentioned this before, Jake. I don't care what your record was the year before. Week 1 is the biggest unpredictable part of any NFL schedule. Teams are fired up. Teams are ready to get the ball rolling. Teams look at the Patriots a few years ago. Their worst loss of the season, they won the Super Bowl, was week 1. Week 1 is unpredictable. Playing in Cleveland is not going to be easy. I think we're going to win. It's going to be a tough game. The next week, I'm glad we're in Paycor Stadium. Baltimore, you said it, I've said it, one of the best defenses in football. But the Bengals are becoming, I don't want to say unbeatable, but they are really hard to beat at home. And I'm glad that game is in Cincinnati. 2-0 would be really sweet during that stretch.
Well, because, I mean, and again, you and I both think they're going to go 2-0. But after that, you have games against the Rams, the Titans, the Cardinals. I mean, you got a very that schedule going up into the bye week is set up very nicely for our Bengals. And then, obviously, as we know, coming out of the bye week, we got the 49ers. That's going to be a tough one. But leading up to the bye week, a schedule that, after those first 2 games is set up very nicely for the Bengals to make a serious run at that number 1 spot. And I think that's right now the focus of this football team, because that's the one thing this team has not been able to accomplish these last couple years, besides finishing off a Super Bowl, is to get that number 1 seed. And I think this year it's very attainable. You look at Tumon, every year teams have to play 2 divisions. This year the Bengals have the AFC South, which is, I mean, I'm just going to come out and say it. It's the worst division in football, I think. And then you have, obviously, the NFC West, who is kind of a little bit in turmoil right now. I mean, the Rams are not the same team that we played 2 years ago in the Super Bowl. The 49ers are going to be tough, but again, they've lost some players. The Seattle Seahawks, they finished the season tough last year, but you never really know what you're going to get with the Seahawks. I mean, I don't know if I feel comfortable saying that team is a playoff team. And then the Cardinals, who were one of the biggest disappointments in football last year. So you have a situation where in an eight of our games, 8 of our 17 games are against the worst division in the AFC. And then you have the NFC division that is in probably the most turmoil. So again, this thing sets up very nicely with the Bengals. Obviously, playing in Kansas City is going to be very difficult. That's a tough matchup. But the Bengals have fared well in Kansas City. Besides that, though, you look at the way this schedule has come about, and I don't know. I just feel like this is one of the better schedules that we have gotten in a long time.
Yeah, that's fair. I think Seattle and San Francisco are going to be tough games. Seattle is in pay core. Seattle made the playoffs last year, and the Rams and the Cardinals are in rebuilding mode. I definitely like our chances there. Playing the AFC South, playing in Jacksonville on prime time is going to be tough. Yeah, the Kansas City Chief is the Chiefs game playing out there. Listen, that's going to be playoff atmosphere. It's easily the top rivalry in the NFL right now. I cannot wait for that game. I think it's a fair schedule. I think the Bengals are set up well. They just need to survive the first few weeks. They have some young players that are going to be playing a lot of snaps. Let's get them acclimated to being starters and protect them a little bit, and then we'll take off, and hopefully we can get another 10, 12-game win streak.
Well, I mean, again, that Chiefs game obviously being on New Year's Eve is, it's one of those things where we're just talking about the first, getting that number 1 overall seed. That game to me is going to be for the number 1 overall seed. So you talk about a big football game, man, oh man, New Year's Eve is going to be rocking in Kansas City, because right now, if you look at the excitement of teams that play each other, I'm not sure there's more excitement behind a matchup beyond the Bengals and Chiefs. I mean, right now, those are really the top dogs, really, of football. And I know I don't want to take anything away from the Eagles, because I think the Eagles are a solid team. But football as a whole, the Bengals and the Chiefs, if they did not both play in the AFC, they'd be playing each other for the Super Bowl every year, I think. So to me, that is going to be not only the biggest matchup for the Bengals, but the biggest matchup probably in the NFL, because it's going to be a battle, and it's going to be 2 of the best teams in the NFL playing each other for a number 1 seed, which is going to be a lot of fun. Yeah,
they definitely been the 2 best teams in the AFC the last 2 years. I think San Francisco was on par with them. If San Francisco has a quarterback last year, I think they beat the Eagles. They were down to Josh Johnson. San Francisco is well coached. They got a lot of good players. Yeah. I think that when you bring up Kansas City, Cincinnati, I think San Francisco's up there also. I tell you, a team that I'm starting to get concerned about a little bit, just reading up on them, is the Miami Dolphins are loaded. I don't know about their quarterback situation, but talent-wise, they got a special roster, very fast roster. So that's another team to monitor. But you're right. When it comes to the AFC, it's between the Bengals and the Chiefs. I think that they're heads on the elite teams in the AFC.
Well, and I think too, a team like the Dolphins that has all this talent, and they do have talent, to me, I just go right to the quarterback. And if you're going to have a team make a run, make a serious run, you've got to have that guy taking snaps. And I have never been sold on Tua. I don't think Tua is a championship caliber quarterback. I could be wrong. I mean, those things sometimes are unpredictable, but I don't know. I just don't see that from Tua. And I think we've seen that over the last couple of years, although Tua's had a winning record, it goes beyond that. And obviously staying healthy as well. I mean, the guy has not been able to stay healthy. And so, when I look at teams like that, I tend to look at the signal caller, and I don't know. I'm just not sold on Tua yet.
Yeah, he was playing really well before he had those string of concussions last year. Is he on the level of Mahomes and Burrow and Allen? No, I don't think he is. Can he get close? I think he can if he stays healthy. That's the key. You're right. I think all the teams that have elite talent that are up there, you have to start looking at the quarterback play. That's going to be the threshold to see if they're championship caliber.
Yeah.
And luckily, I think we have one of those guys, and I hope we just keep him healthy because, like he said, the Super Bowl window is open for his whole career. I agree with him.
I think that is a deciding factor, and that leads us right into let's kind of look at this roster. And again, Maan, we talked about it. We've lost some talent this year, and you have made it very clear on our show, and you're 100% right, that from here on out, every year we're going to be losing talented players. This year it happened to be Von Bell. It happened to be Jesse Bates. You could throw probably Samaje Perine in that mix. I'm not sure you could throw Hayden Hurst in there, but because I don't know if we got we just really got a glimpse of him. I think he's a talented player, but I'm not sure what level of talent he's on. But obviously losing Jesse Bates and Von Bell is tough. And you come into to this season with a defense. Offensively, it's becoming a veteran offensive team. It really is. I mean, guys like Joe Burrow and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, those guys, Jamar Chase now going into his third year, Joe Burrow and T. Higgins going into their fourth year. Obviously, TB, Joe Mixon, those guys have been around. The offensive line now with the addition of Orlando Brown has become a veteran group. I mean, obviously you got Volson going into his second year, but the majority of those guys are veterans now on the offensive line. Even if you throw Jonah Williams or Lel Collins at right tackle, you still have that veteran offensive line. So offensively, this team is becoming a veteran team. Defensively, again, from that front seven, you got guys that are veterans, but that back end is younger. And I think that's going to be the deciding factor on this football team is how do guys like Dax Hill, how do they assimilate to the NFL in their second year? I think he's one of those key pieces. Cam Taylor-Britt, we saw some great things from him, but we're going to need a lot of football snaps from him as well. A guy like Nick Scott, who, again, comes to us from the Rams, going to be very interesting to see how he fits in the mix. You got Cheeto coming off of injury. I still think he's a top 3 corner in the NFL. Hopefully we get that guy back. And obviously Mike Hilton really is the veteran on the back end of this defense now. So going to be very interesting to see. And really at safety, Jordan Battle is going to be battling for a lot of playing time as well. So you got a lot of young guys back there, Maan. Going to be very interesting to see how this to me, it's the defensive side of the ball that is going to be interesting to see how that all pans out throughout the season, because this Bengals football team needs those young guys to make a significant impact this year.
Yeah, I think there's 3. I don't want to use the word glaring because it's not a glaring roster deficiency, but there's 3 concerns I have going into the season. Obviously, tight end depth. I like Irv Smith. Right tackle is a big unknown. We don't know what's going to happen there. We've got a lot of bodies, a lot of people that are capable. We'll see how that shakes out. The big one is safety play, defensive back. You mentioned Cam Taylor-Britt. He's not a safety. He's a cornerback. He had a great rookie season, but we do need him to continue trending up. He's still going to have – he's a young player. He's still developing. Cheeto's coming off an ACL injury. He's looking really good, but he's going to be on a pitch count. I mean, let's face it, they're not going to throw him out there week 1 to play 70 snaps. He's going to be on a pitch count. He's going to play, but we need other guys. Like we need the young guy we drafted, DJ, to come in and play well. Hopefully he develops. We need some of these other young guys to Alan George potentially. The big one to me is safety. Von Bell and Jesse Bates, they were the glue to that secondary. They knew Lou Anarumo's defense. They were coaches on the field. Dax Hill is a rookie. He only played 13% of the defensive snaps last year. Didn't really get to play a lot. Nick Scott played the last 18 games, started the last 18 games for the Rams. He's still developing. We'll see how that – you mentioned Jordan Battle. Teams are going to target our defensive backs early on. They really are. They're young. They're trying to figure things out. And I just hope that Lou Anarumo protects them. That's where that defensive line, Hubbard, Hendrickson, Miles Murphy, they need to come in and get those sacks, put some pressure on the quarterbacks, help that secondary out. Because guess what? Every game they play, they get more experience, more confidence. They're going to get better. So we need to survive the first 4, 5, 6 games. Let those guys get that chemistry. Let Cheeto get stronger. Yeah. Cheeto by week 4 or 5 is going to be back to Cheeto, hopefully. The Cheeto of last year is one of the best defensive backs in football. Wasn't even, he's top 5, and that's not debatable. He was that good.
Yeah.
We need him to get back to that level. But to me, that's a big thing. Tight end, right tackle, and those young players in the backfield, defensive backfield, that they just have to get that experience, get that confidence, and just take off. And I think they'll be fine. We said it on previous episodes. Lou Anarumo started off as a cornerback coach, defensive back coach, and he knows how to get those guys ready. He has a great coaching staff, and every one of them, they're going to be playing well, and the Bengals are going to be – they'll be okay. They'll be okay. Might start off a little rough, but they'll be okay.
I think that's the X factor is Lou, right? Is Lou Dini. That's the X factor here, because you're right. Lou's background and his strength is the back end of the defense, the defensive backfield. And I think that is going to help mold these young guys. And I think probably that's where the Bengals felt like they were able to let Von Bell and Jesse Bates go, is because they have Lou Dini back there to help coach up these guys. And not only Lou, but these defensive coaches on this staff are very talented coaches, very young, talented coaches. So I think when you look at 2 veteran guys like that leave a football team, the weight falls now on that coaching staff. But Lou Dini is the X factor here, and I think we've seen it before that he is able to make these defensive backs play very well, and they have gotten better over the time that Lou Anarumo has been there. So I do think he is the X factor, and I think he helps out the situation. But it is scary. I mean, it is a little scary when you think about all those young guys that are going to be taking snaps. Hopefully Cheeto is able to go week 1. If he is, I agree with you. I think he will be on a pitch count. And I think that's why, too, when you look at this young backfield, this defensive backfield, I think that's one of those reasons why the Bengals went out and looked at the pass rush. They went out, they drafted Miles Murphy with that first pick this year in the draft because they know they've got to get more pressure. They've got to get the quarterback on the ground. We talked about this last year, Maan, is we had a ton of quarterback pressures. We even had a ton of quarterback hits, but we didn't have a ton of sacks. And you've got to finish the play. You've got to get those quarterbacks on the ground. And I think that is where the focus of that pass rush has been this offseason. Getting Joseph Asai. Joseph Asai looks like he's having an incredible offseason as well. Don't forget about Joseph Asai, because he is one of those guys that is going to make a huge impact on this defense, Maan.
Yeah, they only had 30 sacks last year. That number's unacceptable. They need to get up to 45, potentially 50 sacks, and I think they could do that. You want to help this defense out. You want to help out these young cornerbacks, these young safeties. How about improving our rushing? We only averaged 95 yards on the ground last year, 3.8 yards per carry. They had 399 rush attempts. I don't want the Bengals to run the ball more. I would like for them to run more efficiently. If we get 15, 20, 25 more yards per game rushing, doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a few more first downs. Guess what? That's another 2-3 minutes off the clock. That helps out that defense. It helps them out.
Yeah.
And, it keeps the opposing quarterback and their star players on the bench. So hopefully we can get a little better there. I think that's the two big stats, Jake, that's going to help the Bengals win a Super Bowl. Increase our sack numbers and become more efficient running the ball. More efficient. Not more rushing attempts, but more efficient rushing the ball will help out tremendously.
Well, I think the other thing that's going to help out too is this offensive line. I mean, this offensive line, Maan, we've talked about it on the show. This offensive line, to me, is the best offensive line the Bengals have had since I can remember. I think you talk about winning a Super Bowl. If the Bengals have just an above average offensive line these last 2 years, we're probably talking, instead of winning the division 3 years in a row, we're probably talking about winning the Super Bowl 3 years in a row. That's how close we have come to finishing off the season. But that offensive line has struggled. It's struggled in big games toward the end of the year. And this offensive line, Maan, I'm excited to see how this thing works out, because no matter who goes to right tackle, Maan, we've got depth now. We got guys like Cody Ford. If it is Jonah Williams at right tackle, La'el Collins off the bench is pretty damn good, Maan. I mean, we're not talking about, Akeem Adeniji having to start games anymore, hopefully. We're not talking about those guys having to make the Isaiah Princes, having to make these big impacts. We have got some depth now on the offensive line. And to me, we talk about the keys on defense, on offense. It's going to come down to this offensive line. And like you said it, if we're able to run the football, and I think you look at what the Bengals have done this offseason. Joe Mixon obviously going to be a starting running back, but Chase Brown, do not count that guy out, because he is a dynamic player. And the Bengals, so what do the Bengals do? They go out, they get a couple of offensive linemen in free agency, one of them a top tackle in the NFL. In the draft, they go out. Oh, and let's not forget about Irv Smith here too at tight end. But they go out, they get Irv Smith to help with the tight end situation. And then in the draft, they go out and they get a guy like Chase Brown at running back. I mean, this team is building this roster to try to help the deficiencies that we have had these last couple of years.
Yeah, I think Trags mentioned it on our last episode a few weeks ago about the offensive line being the best they've had in years, and I agree. Orlando Brown, very, very good player. Kappa's a good player. Karras and Volson, good guys. Volson's going to, keep on trending up and improving. Right tackle is the unknown, but they'll figure that out. The offensive line is the key, and on Twitter it's been exhausting lately. A lot of these fans are coming in bashing Joe Burrow, bashing the Bengals, poverty, this, and it just made me think about Joe Burrow's career. You've said this, a lot of people have said it. That offensive line he played with going to the Super Bowl was bottom 5 in the NFL. And he made it to the Super Bowl with that line.
Crazy.
This is just my opinion, but would Pat Mahomes have made it to the Super Bowl with that line? Would Aaron Rodgers have made it to the Super Bowl with that line? No. I doubt it. Would Josh Allen? He was pummeled. He was absolutely just hit. Every completion he was hit. They just found a way. I know it was a team effort. The defense played well. He has star players. And he's just a special talent. What's he going to do with this offensive line he has this year with Orlando Brown and all those guys we mentioned just a few minutes ago? It's going to be scary. And I think some of the NFL teams know that. The Bengals have done a lot, spent a lot of money on the offensive line. And it's going to be a stellar year for him. And I just cannot wait for it. I cannot wait.
Yeah, I mean, again, I know I always sound like a homer, but I just look at this roster, Maan, and I don't see a lot of areas that concern me. Last year we talked about on this show the concerning factors at offensive line. I don't see that this year. I think the one concerning thing for me is just the youth on the back end of that defense. But to me, Lou Anarumo really helps that. And again, I just love what the Bengals did this offseason. I think they went out and they looked at what do we need to improve on, and instead of going out and just spending crazy money, they went out and they tried to improve where they were deficient. Even a guy like Terrell Basham, I mean, who knows if he's going to make the roster or not, but he is a pass rushing specialist. And the Bengals go out and get a guy like Terrell Basham. Again, they understand that they've got to get these quarterbacks on the ground. Like you said, 30 sacks, that you can't have that. You cannot have 30 sacks and win a Super Bowl. But with all these deficiencies that we've seen, last year was the pass rush. The year before was the offensive line. All these deficiencies that we've seen, this team has still played for 2 straight AFC championships. And this locker room, this group of guys, and obviously Joe Burrow, this team is loaded this year with talent. They are loaded. And I think that's why when you look at all these, and I don't look at a lot of the, the power rankings and all that. I don't look at all that stuff. But when you look at all that stuff, the Bengals are at the top of every single list. And it's because, not just because of the success they've had these last 2 years, but because this roster is incredible. It is so loaded with talent, Maan.
It is. It's boom or bust. I mean, really, no excuses. The front office and the coaching staff, I mean, I know they're laid back and they're excited about the upcoming season, but there is pressure. 2 years ago, there wasn't that expectation to, of course, the Bengals coaching staff says, hey, we have a good team. We're going to go fight for a Super Bowl. They're coming off a 4-win season. Yeah. Now, they've gone to 2 straight AFC championship games. There is that expectation, and there's going to be some pressure there. And we'll see how it shakes out, Jake. It's going to be, I'm expecting big things, but there's always those intangibles, those other little things that pop up that can slow things down. Let's dodge those. Let's hope we don't have those this year. And we'll see come 2 or 3, 4 weeks from now.
Well, expectations are high, Maan. You have them at 13-4. I have them at 14-3. Either way, if the Bengals finish in that area record-wise, I think we got a great shot of having the number 1 seed. So expectations
Jake,
high. Yeah.
Real quick, let me piggyback on that. I talked to you before we started recording here. The Athletic every year they come out with a survey, a fan survey. They usually send it out like mid-June, and they ask a series of questions to their subscribers how they think the organization is doing, what the expectations are. I'm just going to read a couple of them because we're just literally piggybacking off that discussion right now.
Okay, yeah. We love our guys at the Athletic.
Oh yeah, they're great guys. And by the way, Jay Morrison, who unfortunately was let go by the Athletic, is currently been picked up. He's going to be writing for Pro Football Network, which is a good thing. So he keeps his credentials. We get to follow Jay Morrison. He's one of my favorite Bengal beat writers. He is the best. Okay, here's one of the questions.
A friend of the Bengal Pulse, Maan, and a friend of the Bengal Pulse. We
absolutely,
love Jay.
Absolutely. Here's one of the questions. I'm not going to read them all. There's like 30 or 40, but one of the questions, do you feel the organization, the Bengals organization, values you as a fan? In 2020, because they've done this for years, in 2020, that number was 34% said yes.
Wow.
Guess what has happened since then? It's up to 91%, the Joe Burrow effect.
Wow.
That shows you what winning does and having exciting players.
That's crazy.
How confident are you the Bengals are moving in the right direction? This is from a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being, not very confident, 5 being very confident. In 2020, only 26% said very confident. In 2023, it's 72%. 4 is just below very confident. 26% in 2023 think the Bengals are moving in the right direction. So if you take that, almost 90% of the fan base, over 90% think the Bengals are definitely moving in a confident, or they're very confident about the Bengals moving in the right direction. It's a big difference from 3 years.
Yeah.
Rate the job. Here's the last one I'm going to read real quick. I don't want to read all of them. Subscribe to The Athletic. It's a great publication. Rate the job that the front office has done this off season. What do you think? On a scale of, okay, again, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best.
Okay.
29% think the Bengals deserve a 5 this offseason. 61% think the Bengals deserve a 4 this offseason. So that's pretty good. Fans are pretty optimistic about the moves they've done this past offseason. The organizational trust level, let me read a couple more here. Duke Tobin. Duke Tobin has a 51% approval rating. That's 5 being the highest. 42% 4. So he's above 90%. Zach Taylor has a 95% approval rating, basically. So the fan base is really high on Duke Tobin and Zach Taylor. Ownership, a little lower, a little lower. If you compare 4s and 5s, they have the Bengals at about a 60. The fan base thinks 67% of the fan base is confident in the Bengals ownership group that they're going to do the right thing. So it just shows you the big difference they've had the last 2 years, from that 4-win season to going to back-to-back AFC championship games. The fan base, they're all in on the Cincinnati Bengals, all in. And let's just keep on winning and keep those numbers high.
Yeah, absolutely. And real quick, Mom, before we got a couple other exciting things that we have coming up here. Obviously, everybody is waiting around to see contract talks and situational contract stuff. Joe Burrow contract may be coming up here very soon. We saw him out partying with a lot of big wigs and famous people for that. What was that, Fanatics party? It's like some kind of Fanatics party or something. But Joe Burrow out there doing his thing, partying with some very influential and high level people, so to speak. So Joe Burrow contract coming up. Hopefully a T. Higgins one, a Logan Wilson one. We have the Ring of Honor coming up, something that we're very excited about. And piggybacking off of that real quick, Maan, the Corey Dillon situation, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. What are your thoughts on it? Because obviously, for you guys that don't know, Corey Dillon came out and talked a little bit about the Ring of Honor and his thoughts on where he should be when it comes to fan voting for the Ring of Honor. What are your thoughts on that real quick, Mon?
I get his frustration. We're frustrated about the process. At least we've said that in the past. I think they should have more than 2 players a year going in. There's a backlog of players. They just started this Ring of Honor process. I think he's frustrated about that, because if you want to get serious consideration for Hall of Fame, you need to be in a team Ring of Honor. Mm-hmm. Is Corey Dillon one of the best all-time Bengals? He absolutely is. There was a lot of we're referencing the article from Paul Boehner. It was very detailed and very Corey was very to the point about it. He's with his frustrations. He was on Bengal Jim show last night. He talked about it a little bit, but he didn't seem angry. He was talking. He loves the fans. He loves the city of Cincinnati. The process of selecting people in the Ring of Honor, I have problems with it. I really do. There's so many good, deserving players, and it's just hard to get 2 in a year. I know that I think they did 4 the first year. Corey Dillon, for the fans on Twitter that were sort of bashing him, they need to understand something. The 90s was one of the worst decades in Bengal history. We've talked about it. They're one of the worst sports teams in all of sports, not just the NFL. There was only a handful of players during that stretch that NFL teams feared when they came to play the Bengals. Corey Dillon was one of them. Yes. He was – those records he set, he played – with players that they were terrible. The Denver game, I think they had 40 yards passing the whole game. They could not pass the ball.
I'm not sure they had 40. I think they had
might have been
20.
Yeah. They had 8, 9 guys in the box to stop Corey Dillon, and Denver had a top 5 defense. A top 5 defense. He destroyed them. Well, that happened a lot. He didn't get 280 every week, but there were games they knew, hey, man, all the Bengals have is Corey Dillon. 8 people in the box, 8 people in the box. It didn't matter. He was that good. He was that good. I appreciate him. He's one of my all-time favorite Bengals. Yeah, were his antics a little over the top? Yes, they were. Yes, they were.
Well,
he was.
I think a lot of people too kind of look at the finished product, right? How did it all end? Well, He was injured his last year. He only had about 500 yards rushing that year, and it ended a little ugly, right? Then he goes on and he goes to New England. He wins a Super Bowl with New England. So I think that probably is a little bit of that angst that we see. But just remember this. I'm going to throw this stat out to you. This is insane. Again, Mon, you and I talked about this many of times. He played on very bad Bengal teams. From 97 to 2003, all right, so Corey Dillon played 7 years with the Bengals. 6 of those years, Mon, he rushed for over 1,000 yards. The only year he didn't was that last year when he was injured. He rushed for over 8,000 yards for the Cincinnati Bengals, Mon. That's impressive for you Bengal fans that watched our franchise like Mon and I did back in the 90s and even the early 2000s before Marvin Lewis got there. Mon, what he did in Cincinnati is impressive. Now, I will say this. I agree with you on the process of the Ring of Honor. I wish they would put more guys in at a time. But and Corey Dillon's very deserving. I think he'll be in the Ring of Honor. But there's a lot of guys out there, to me, that are a little bit more deserving at this time. If we're going to just look at the process and look at how the process goes, 2 guys a year, there are still more guys on that list, to me, that are more deserving than Corey Dillon. But the list is getting shorter when it comes to that, because I do feel like Corey Dillon is very deserving, and I do feel like he will be in the Ring of Honor one day. The process is a little flawed. The Bengals are a little bit behind when it comes to Ring of Honors. And I wish maybe those first couple years they would have done 4 at a time. I think that would have been the best way to do it, but who knows, if that's true or not.
I'll say I agree with what you're saying, but I'm not asking for a debate here, because Chad Johnson deserves to be in. He was one of the best wide receivers ever to play for the Bengals, and he was 6 years top wide receiver in the NFL. He played when the Bengals were on the uptick. He played when they were coming out of that lost decade. I think Corey Dillon, as a player, different positions, was just as dominant at his position as Chad was at his position. Unfortunately, Chad was on teams that were trending up, won 11 games, went to the playoffs. Corey never had that luxury. I want to add one other thing. I'm not here to bash other podcasts and other people, and I'm not going to say names. I respect the fans that don't want to vote for Corey because some of his antics, throwing the helmet to the stands and his shoulder pads. I respect that. I respect it. But to come out on Twitter and say he wasn't that he wasn't a good player, he wasn't even top 5 in his era, you lose all credibility. You're ridiculous. I don't even know if they watch our show, but he knows who I'm talking about. That is the most idiotic statement I've ever heard in my life. This same guy said that there's 25 better running backs currently in the NFL than Joe Mixon. 25.
That's crazy.
This person has it's comical, but it is what it is. You keep on saying what you need to say. I think it's ridiculous. And I didn't say your name. I didn't say the podcast, and I won't. But it's just ridiculous. When people say bombastic, ridiculous things like that, how can you take them serious? How can you? But
Mon,
it is what it is.
Whoever is saying that, Mon, obviously does not do any research or even watch a lot of football, Mon, because
Corey Dillon, a research guru. He's a research guru. He prides himself on it. But
let me give him this stat, because Corey Dillon, to say that Corey Dillon was not one of the top 5 in that era, Mon, Corey Dillon is top 10 rusher of all time. I mean, you look at the top 10 guys: Walter Payton, Barry Sanders, Adrian Peterson, LaDainian Tomlinson, Eric Dickerson, Tony Dorsett, Marshall Faulk. Then you got Fred Taylor, Corey Dillon, O.J. Simpson. Fred Taylor and Corey Dillon are the only 2 guys on that list, Mon, that have not first-time Hall of Fame ballot guys. So
you're talking about the club. You're talking about the 70 attempts the whole career. There's that club that you're referencing.
The 70,
Yeah.
yes, the 70 attempt club. And to me, that's what you have to look at. You have to look at that club. That club says it all. And if you put Corey Dillon on the same list with Walter Payton, Barry Sanders, Adrian Peterson, LaDainian Tomlinson, Eric Dickerson, Tony Dorsett, Marshall Faulk, I mean, Maan, whoever says anything negative, and again, like I said, I said it earlier, Corey Dillon left in a very ugly way, and it left a bad taste in a lot of Bengal fans' mouths, and I get that. I was one of those Bengal fans. It left a bad taste in my mouth because I'm loyal to my team. But to come out and say, I would never come out and say something as ridiculous as Corey Dillon was not good. Corey Dillon was one of the top running backs of that era, Maan. He was legitimately good. Crazy good, Maan.
Yeah.
So
I agree 100%. Yeah. I was a big fan, and listen, he brought some joy during that dark period. He brought some joy because we knew that he was going to come in and he was going to deliver. I wish he just played on better teams.
And to say Joe Mixon's not a top 25 running back, you are a clown. That's the most idiotic thing I've ever heard of in my entire life. You are a clown if you truly believe that. That to me, that's kind of a clickbait thing. Somebody just trying to get arguments. It's got to be, because you can't possibly think that is true. You can't possibly. No person could think that is true.
No, that was during the big debate. Joe Mixon cut Joe Mixon. I mean, there's other guys like unfortunately when he was charged with this off-field thing, there was some of these same guys they were sort of giddy about it because, like we talk about, they wanted to win the argument. They about Joe Mixon and all that. So it's just silly talk. And I'm glad the offseason is almost over. Let's get the football. Yeah,
that's just insane. All right, Maan, before we get out of here, it's been a little while since we've talked. Maan, our Cincinnati Reds are going to the All-Star break with 50 wins, Maan. 50 wins. In first place by one game over the Milwaukee Brewers. Yesterday, a tough loss, 1-0 loss. But, Maan, this Reds team, I've said it all year, keep your eye on this team, Maan. They are exciting. What about what Ellie De La Cruz did the other day? Oh, my God. Maan, I can't even tell you how many baseball games I've watched in my lifetime, how many Reds games I've watched in my lifetime. Maan, I have never seen any. The only other time I saw something like that, stealing home like that, was on the movie Major League. Remember when Willie Mays Hayes in Major League steals home? Maan, I have never seen anything like that in real life. I mean, the guy is incredible. He's 21 years old. I've said it on the show. If he stays healthy, he's a Hall of Famer. This Reds team, Maan, is so much fun to watch. I cannot wait. September in our city in Cincinnati is going to be absolutely electric. It is going to be awesome.
Yeah, that play you're talking about where he stole home, I just love his baseball smarts. He was so smart. He was sitting there. He saw the pitcher catch the ball, turn his back, and he took off. He knew that the play was still, he could still go, and it just caught Milwaukee flat-footed. That he is phenomenal. They got so many great young players, and they're finding a way to make it work with that pitching staff. And they have, listen, it's suspect. I mean, they've had some guys that have done well, but their two big stars are hurt. They're not going to come back until August. They have got to make a move to reinforce that pitching staff. They have to. They have to get at least one, maybe two more guys. Yeah. Hopefully Nick Kroll does that. But, this is good times to be a Cincinnati Reds fan. It's a lot of fun to watch them play.
Oh, my God. Maan, they are so much fun. And they, like I said earlier, I mean, just the, in the beginning, when the season first started, I was going to games and, the stadium was empty. I could move around wherever I wanted to. Now I can't even buy tickets anymore. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's that type of electricity here in the city, and you love to see it because I think I said this before, the Bengals and the Reds both trending in that same direction of young, talented teams that are just fun to watch, just young guys going out and playing for the love of the game. it's a fun time. But guys, that's another edition of the Bengals Pulse. Once again, if you like this podcast, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Make sure you check us out on all the podcast platforms, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify. As always, please give Maan and I that 5-star review. We very much appreciate that. Follow Maan on Twitter at @TheFireMaan and me at Coach Jake Owens 9. And of course, as always, follow the Bengal Pulse on Twitter at Bengals_Pulse9 and on Instagram the same without the @ Bengals_Pulse9. And as always, check out all the awesome podcasts right here on the Wincinnati Podcast Network. Maan, good to see you again, bud. I'm excited that we're back together and rolling. It's going to be a fun season. He is Maan. I am Jake. This is the Bengals Pulse. Hoo day, Bengal fans. We will
see you guys.